For decades, the world tried to explain powerful women using words like charm, luck, beauty, manipulation, or even mystery. But behind many of the women who rise faster, speak louder, command rooms, and refuse to settle for less, there is often something deeper happening beneath the surface. Something biological, something psychological, something most people never think about. Testosterone, a hormone usually associated with men, aggression, dominance, confidence, ambition, competitiveness, and risk-taking. Yet many people are shocked to learn that women naturally produce testosterone too. And for some women, understanding how to harness the traits linked to it changes everything. Think about the women who walk into rooms and immediately control the energy without even trying. The women who negotiate higher salaries without trembling. The women who leave relationships that no longer serve them. The women who build companies, challenge systems, attract attention, take risks, and somehow always seem 10 steps ahead emotionally and mentally. Society often calls these women intimidating, difficult, too ambitious, too masculine, but history quietly reveals something fascinating. Many of the women who transformed industries, cultures, businesses, politics, and relationships possessed traits commonly linked to elevated testosterone expression, confidence under pressure, emotional detachment when necessary, decisiveness, competitiveness, and an unusual tolerance for risk. Take the story of a young sales executive who entered one of the most competitive corporate environments in her country. In the beginning, she was constantly ignored in meetings. Her ideas were repeated by male coworkers who later received credit for them. She was told to smile more, soften her tone, and be less aggressive. At first, she obeyed. She became quieter, more agreeable, and more accommodating. Yet the more she shrank herself, the more invisible she became. One day, after months of frustration, she made a decision. She stopped asking for permission. She began speaking directly. She negotiated harder. She maintained eye contact longer. She stopped apologizing unnecessarily. Within 2 years, she became one of the company's youngest executives. People called her cold. Others called her brilliant. But privately, she admitted something shocking. The moment she embraced assertiveness and competitiveness instead of suppressing them, her entire life changed. Of course, power itself is neutral. Like fire, it can warm a home or burn it down. Some women use confidence, influence, and emotional discipline to build extraordinary lives. Others use those same traits manipulatively. Throughout history, there have been women who mastered persuasion, seduction, emotional intelligence, and dominance not only to survive but to control people around them. Some learned how to strategically influence wealthy men. Others built empires through psychological leverage and charisma. Some weaponized attraction, confidence, and emotional detachment to get access to money, status, influence, or protection. The truth is uncomfortable but important. Confidence and dominance are tools. What matters is the intention behind them. One woman, raised in deep poverty, realized early that the world rewarded confidence more than perfection. While others waited to feel ready, she took opportunities immediately. She learned how to speak with certainty even when unsure. She learned how to negotiate. She learned how to handle rejection without emotional collapse. Over time, she transformed herself socially, financially, and mentally. Years later, people assumed she had always been naturally confident. They never saw the fear she trained herself to overcome. They never understood that confidence is often less about personality and more about conditioning the brain to tolerate discomfort and uncertainty repeatedly. Modern science is beginning to uncover fascinating connections between testosterone and behavior in women. Studies increasingly suggest that testosterone can influence assertiveness, competitiveness, confidence, libido, motivation, resilience, and willingness to take risks. This does not mean women should become emotionless or aggressive caricatures. Quite the opposite. The most effective women learn balance. They combine feminine intuition, emotional awareness, and social intelligence with boldness, decisiveness, and ambition. That combination can become incredibly powerful. This audiobook is not about turning women into men. It is about helping women understand traits society often taught them to suppress. It is about recognizing the power of confidence, directness, ambition, discipline, emotional control, and strategic thinking. It is about understanding why some women seem magnetic, fearless, and impossible to manipulate emotionally. Most importantly, it is about showing women that many of the qualities they secretly admire in powerful people are not reserved for others. They can be developed. Because the truth is simple. The world rarely hands power to hesitant people. It responds to certainty, conviction, emotional strength, and bold action. And the women who understand that often change their lives forever. Most women have absolutely no idea how much of their life is controlled by hesitation. Not lack of beauty, not lack of intelligence, not lack of opportunity. Hesitation. The hesitation to speak. The hesitation to demand more. The hesitation to flirt first, leave first, charge higher, negotiate harder, say no without guilt, say yes without fear, walk away without crying, or take risks without meeting everyone's approval first. That hesitation quietly destroys more female potential than failure ever will. And that is exactly why understanding testosterone psychologically, mentally, socially changes everything. Not the hormone itself, the energy behind it. Because what most people call high testosterone energy is often just boldness without apology. It is the ability to move before fear finishes talking. It is emotional resilience, competitive drive, decisiveness, assertiveness, calm dominance, the willingness to tolerate discomfort long enough to win. And the women who learn this become dangerous in the best possible way. Look carefully at the women who seem impossible to ignore, the women who always get promoted faster, the women who somehow attract attention the second they walk into rooms. The women who leave relationships and somehow glow up instead of breaking down. The women who can coldly cut off disrespect without writing 3-page emotional explanations. The women who ask for more money without shaking. The women who can recover from rejection in 2 days while others spiral for 2 years. Most people think those women are simply lucky, prettier, or naturally confident. Many of them simply stopped operating from fear. That shift changes everything. Most women are raised to become emotionally acceptable before they become powerful. From childhood, they are taught to smile more, soften their opinions, avoid conflict, avoid appearing too ambitious, avoid intimidating men, avoid making others uncomfortable, avoid looking desperate, avoid looking arrogant, avoid looking aggressive. Slowly, many women become masters of self-suppression. Meanwhile, the world rewards confidence aggressively. Not perfection, confidence. That is why less talented people often outperform more talented women. The louder woman gets opportunities first. The bolder woman gets remembered first. The emotionally detached woman escapes toxic situations faster. The woman who can survive embarrassment grows faster than the woman obsessed with avoiding judgment. This is why testosterone energy becomes a game changer, psychologically. It destroys excessive fear. And once fear weakens, women start behaving differently in ways that completely alter their lives. A woman with low confidence enters a room hoping people like her. A woman with powerful energy enters deciding whether she likes the room. That difference sounds small until you realize it changes body language, eye contact, voice tone, standards, dating choices, salary negotiations, friendships, business decisions, and even attraction itself. Confidence is magnetic because certainty is magnetic. People trust certainty. People follow certainty. People remember certainty. This is also why many women suddenly become more attractive after heartbreak, success, divorce, business growth, or personal transformation. It is not always because their appearance changed. Sometimes their energy changed first. Their posture changed. Their boundaries changed. Their desperation disappeared. Their approval addiction weakened. They stopped over-explaining themselves emotionally. And suddenly everyone notices them. There is another uncomfortable truth many women eventually discover. The world often treats agreeable women nicely but respects fearless women more. That realization changes female psychology permanently. A woman who fears conflict can be manipulated easily. She struggles saying no. She overthinks boundaries. She tolerates disrespect longer. She stays in draining relationships longer. She accepts lower pay longer. She apologizes constantly. She seeks permission before acting. But once a woman develops testosterone-like psychological traits, decisiveness, emotional control, competitiveness, confidence under pressure, manipulation becomes harder. Now she can walk away. Now she can negotiate. Now she can risk embarrassment. Now she can survive rejection. Now she can chase opportunities aggressively instead of waiting passively to be chosen. That is power. And no, this does not mean becoming emotionless, rude, or acting like a man. The most powerful women are rarely the loudest. They are simply internally solid. They combine emotional intelligence with strength, warmth with boundaries, softness with standards, femininity with fearlessness. That combination is lethal. Because a woman who is emotionally intelligent but also unafraid becomes extremely difficult to control, socially, emotionally, financially, or romantically. This audiobook is not teaching women to become aggressive caricatures. It is teaching women to stop shrinking, to stop apologizing for ambition, to stop confusing niceness with weakness, to stop thinking confidence is somehow unfeminine, to stop waiting until they feel ready before taking action. Most people never realize that confidence is built backwards. Action comes first, feelings come later. The fearless woman is rarely fearless at the beginning. She simply acts while scared repeatedly until fear loses authority over her life. That is the shift. The female power shift. The moment a woman realizes that being liked by everyone is not nearly as valuable as being respected by herself. The moment she realizes she does not need permission to take space. The moment she understands that ambition is not a flaw. The moment she discovers that boldness changes how the world reacts to her. And the moment she finally understands that many of the traits society taught women to suppress are often the exact traits required to build freedom, influence, attraction, wealth, leadership, and personal power. Once that realization happens, women rarely go back to who they used to be. There is a strange pattern that quietly follows many women throughout life. A woman can be intelligent, talented, attractive, hardworking, emotionally aware, and full of potential, yet still lose opportunities to people who are less capable than her. Why? Because confidence often matters before competence ever gets noticed. That truth frustrates many women once they finally see it clearly. The workplace rewards visibility. Dating rewards confidence. Leadership rewards decisiveness. Social influence rewards certainty. Yet millions of women were raised to question themselves before speaking, soften themselves before succeeding, and overthink themselves before acting. This is the confidence gap. And it silently destroys dreams every single day. The confidence gap is not simply low self-esteem. It is deeper than that. It is psychological conditioning that teaches women to prioritize acceptance over power, approval over ambition, safety over boldness. A confident man walks into a room assuming he belongs there. A conditioned woman often walks into the same room trying to prove she deserves to stay. That difference changes everything. Studies have repeatedly shown that men often apply for jobs even when they meet only part of the qualifications, while many women hesitate unless they feel almost perfectly prepared. That single psychological difference changes salaries, careers, leadership opportunities, and financial independence over time. Confidence creates action. Action creates opportunity. Opportunity creates transformation. Meanwhile, hesitation creates invisibility. There is a quote often associated with billionaire Sarah Blakely that perfectly captures this mindset shift. Confidence is not, they will like me. Confidence is, I'll be fine if they don't. That one sentence changes female psychology completely. Most women are not actually afraid of failure itself. They are afraid of judgment, rejection, embarrassment, looking foolish, being disliked, looking too much, looking desperate, looking intimidating, looking selfish. And because of that fear, they play smaller than they should. One woman spent 7 years in a corporate role where she consistently outperformed her coworkers. She trained new employees, fixed crises others avoided, brought in clients quietly behind the scenes. Yet every promotion somehow went to louder, more assertive people around her. One day, frustrated beyond belief, she asked her manager why she kept getting overlooked. The answer shattered her. "You're excellent," he told her, "but you don't present yourself like someone who wants leadership." That sentence haunted her for months. Not because she lacked skill, because she realized she had spent years hoping her hard work would speak for itself while others confidently advertised themselves every chance they got. After that moment, everything changed. She began speaking earlier in meetings instead of waiting. She stopped over-explaining her ideas nervously. She stopped apologizing before making points. She negotiated harder. 2 years later, she doubled her income. Same woman. Different confidence. The frightening thing about overthinking is that it disguises itself as intelligence. Many women think they're simply being careful, realistic, or responsible when in reality fear is controlling their decisions quietly from the background. Fear says, "What if I embarrass myself?" Confidence says, "What if this changes my life?" Fear focuses on protection. Confidence focuses on possibility. And the women who succeed massively in life often train themselves to focus on possibility more than humiliation. This is also why emotionally manipulative people target insecure women more easily. A woman addicted to approval becomes easier to guilt trip, control, pressure, silence, or emotionally drain. She struggles setting boundaries because she fears losing people. She says yes when exhausted. She tolerates disrespect longer than she should. But confidence changes female behavior dramatically. Suddenly she can say. Suddenly she can leave. Suddenly she can demand clarity. Suddenly she stops explaining her worth endlessly. And suddenly people who benefited from her insecurity become uncomfortable. There is another brutal truth many women eventually discover. The world often treats insecure women as convenient. Confident women become harder to control. That is why developing confidence is not just attractive or empowering, it is protective. Even in relationships, confidence changes everything. Women who fear abandonment often tolerate emotional inconsistency, disrespect, mixed signals, manipulation, or low effort because they fear ending up alone. But women with strong internal confidence become selective instead of desperate. They stop chasing emotionally unavailable people. They stop trying to earn love through self-sacrifice. They begin choosing themselves too. Perhaps the most important thing women must understand is this. Confidence is not something people are born with. It is built through repeated, uncomfortable action. Every difficult conversation survived builds confidence. Every rejection survived builds confidence. Every boundary enforced builds confidence. Every risk taken builds confidence. Fear weakens when ignored long enough. And eventually something extraordinary happens. The woman who once begged for acceptance becomes the woman who calmly decides what she will and will not tolerate. That is the shift. The confidence gap begins closing the moment a woman stops asking, "What if they reject me?" and starts asking, "What if I stop rejecting myself first?" There is a moment many women experience that completely changes how they see the world. It usually happens after they stop being excessively nice. Not kind, not feminine, not emotionally intelligent. Just excessively accommodating. Suddenly people react differently to them. Men become more attentive. Some become intimidated. Friends start acting strange. Co-workers become more competitive. Opportunities increase. Respect increases. Attention increases. Jealousy increases too. And for the first time, many women realize something uncomfortable. Society does not respond to bold women the same way it responds to everyone else. Because bold women disrupt expectations. Most people are comfortable around women who minimize themselves, women who constantly apologize, women who avoid conflict, women who soften every opinion, women who prioritize everyone else's comfort above their own needs. Those women feel socially safe. But a woman who walks into a room with certainty changes the emotional atmosphere instantly. She speaks directly. She maintains eye contact. She does not nervously laugh after every sentence. She's emotionally grounded. She's selective with attention. She does not desperately seek validation. And that energy affects people psychologically whether they admit it or not. Some admire it immediately. Others resent it immediately. Because confidence in women exposes insecurity in others very fast. This is why bold women often experience a strange contradiction. They become more attractive and more criticized at the exact same time. A woman can become more successful, more confident, more emotionally healthy, more ambitious, and more self-respecting and somehow receive more negative reactions than before. Why? Because power changes social dynamics. People unconsciously expect women to remain emotionally accessible, agreeable, nurturing, accommodating, and non-threatening. The moment a woman becomes highly assertive, highly ambitious, emotionally detached from approval, or difficult to manipulate, some people begin labeling her differently. She's intimidating. She thinks she's better than everyone. She's too masculine. She's difficult. She's cold. What is fascinating is that men displaying the exact same traits are often called leaders. This is one of the biggest social truths women eventually discover. Confidence is admired in theory but often challenged in practice, especially in women. There is a reason powerful women throughout history fascinated people so deeply. Women like Cleopatra, Margaret Thatcher, and Oprah Winfrey all understood something psychologically important. Presence changes outcomes. Not just intelligence. Not just beauty. Presence. The ability to emotionally command attention. The ability to remain calm under pressure. The ability to influence rooms psychologically. The ability to make people feel your certainty before you even finish speaking. That is power. And society reacts strongly to women who possess it because female power has always made people emotionally uncomfortable. Especially when it cannot be controlled easily. One woman described how differently people treated her after she transformed physically, emotionally, and financially following a difficult breakup. Before, she constantly over-explained herself, tolerated disrespect, and feared being disliked. But after rebuilding herself mentally, something shifted. She stopped chasing. Stopped begging. Stopped proving. Stopped overgiving. And suddenly men pursued her harder, co-workers respected her more, strangers treated her differently, and even old friends became colder. Nothing magical happened. Her energy changed, and that is when she realized something shocking. People often respond more strongly to confidence than kindness. This also explains why emotionally secure women tend to become highly magnetic socially. They are not trying desperately to impress everyone. They are internally validated already. That creates calmness, mystery, standards, emotional control. People can feel that energy. Confidence changes body language. Confidence changes speech patterns. Confidence changes attraction. Confidence changes social positioning. Even silence sounds different when spoken by a confident woman. And perhaps the most uncomfortable truth of all is this: many people prefer women who doubt themselves, because insecure women are easier to influence, easier to guilt trip, easier to emotionally manipulate, easier to pressure socially. A woman constantly seeking approval becomes easier to control because fear controls her behavior from the background. Fear of losing people, fear of criticism, fear of rejection, fear of appearing selfish. But bold women slowly stop negotiating against themselves internally. They stop shrinking to protect fragile egos around them. They stop apologizing for standards. They stop feeling guilty for wanting more. And that shift completely changes how society reacts to them. This is why many women notice that becoming powerful socially can feel lonely at first. Some friendships weaken. Some men become insecure. Some people quietly root against them. The world celebrates female empowerment publicly, but privately, many people still feel threatened by women who genuinely embody it. Especially women who are emotionally independent. That type of woman becomes difficult to manipulate through fear. And fear is how many people maintain control in relationships, workplaces, families, and social environments. But here is what powerful women eventually understand. Being liked by everyone is not power. Being respected by yourself is. That realization changes female psychology permanently. Because once a woman realizes she no longer needs universal approval to feel valuable, she becomes freer than most people around her. She can finally take risks, speak directly, leave unhealthy situations, pursue ambitious goals, set standards unapologetically, and exist without constantly editing herself for comfort. This is why society rewards bold women differently. Not because bold women are perfect, but because certainty, confidence, emotional control, and ambition naturally create influence. People remember women who fully own their presence. People react emotionally to women who refuse to shrink. And while the world may criticize bold women loudly, history quietly proves something fascinating. The women who changed their lives, and sometimes the world, were rarely the quietest women in the room. There is something deeply fascinating about women who always seem to get what they want out of life. Not because they are the prettiest. Not because they are the luckiest. And definitely not because life is magically easier for them. Yet somehow they attract better opportunities, command more respect, recover from setbacks faster, influence people more easily, and move through life with a level of certainty that feels almost unfair to everyone watching them. Most people misunderstand these women completely. They think these women are simply born confident. But confidence is rarely the real secret. The real secret is psychological positioning. Women who consistently win in life tend to think differently long before they behave differently. And once you understand their psychology, you begin realizing their power is far less mysterious than society makes it seem. The first trait powerful women share is emotional control. Not emotional suppression. Control. Most women are taught to react emotionally first and think strategically later. That conditioning creates chaos. One bad text ruins the day. One rejection destroys confidence. One awkward moment creates weeks of overthinking. One disagreement becomes emotional collapse. But women who always get what they want learn something life-changing very early. Emotions are real, but emotions are not always useful. That realization shifts everything. Instead of reacting instantly, they pause. Instead of chasing, they observe. Instead of panicking, they calculate. And because they stay emotionally grounded while others become emotionally impulsive, they naturally gain psychological advantage in relationships, careers, business, and social environments. This is why emotionally calm women often appear powerful without trying. Calmness signals certainty. And certainty influences people deeply. There is a famous quote from Coco Chanel that says, "The most courageous act is still to think for yourself, aloud." That quote captures the psychology perfectly. Powerful women think independently. Most people unconsciously shape their personalities around approval. They say what sounds acceptable, wear what feels socially safe, pursue what others validate, stay in relationships too long, hide ambition to avoid criticism. But women who consistently get what they want slowly stop outsourcing their self-worth to public opinion. That is when they become dangerous socially. Because once a woman no longer fears disapproval intensely, she becomes harder to manipulate. Another hidden trait these women share is selective attention. This changes attraction, relationships, and influence completely. Most insecure people obsess over who ignores them. Powerful women obsess over who deserves access to them. That difference sounds simple, but psychologically it changes everything. A woman operating from insecurity constantly asks, "How do I keep this person interested?" A powerful woman asks, "Does this person even deserve my energy?" That shift creates standards. And standards create power. This is why women who always get what they want often appear magnetic. They're not desperately trying to be chosen, they're choosing carefully themselves. That emotional positioning creates mystery, confidence, and attraction naturally. People value what feels emotionally scarce. Another thing powerful women understand is the importance of strategic confidence. Not loud confidence, strategic confidence. The ability to project certainty before results fully arrive. Many women wait to feel ready before taking action, but women who rise fast understand something most people never learn. Confidence is often created after action, not before it. So they move first. Apply first. Speak first. Launch first. Flirt first. Negotiate first. Take risks first. And because they act while others hesitate endlessly, they gain opportunities faster than people who may actually be more talented than them. This is why the world often feels unfair to insecure people. Confidence multiplies visibility. And visibility multiplies opportunity. One woman recalled how she spent years being the safe girl, quiet, helpful, agreeable, emotionally available to everyone. She thought being endlessly kind would naturally make people value her. Instead, people overlooked her constantly. Then something changed after a painful breakup. She stopped over-explaining. Stopped chasing people emotionally. Stopped trying to convince others of her value. Started focusing on herself physically, mentally, financially, and emotionally. And suddenly people who ignored her before became obsessed with her energy. Why? Because confidence changes social dynamics dramatically. People often respond more strongly to certainty than effort. This is also why powerful women protect their energy aggressively, that they understand attention is currency, emotional energy is currency, time is currency. So they stop giving unlimited access to people who drain them. They stop tolerating inconsistency. They stop rewarding disrespect. They stop explaining boundaries repeatedly. That emotional discipline creates freedom. And perhaps the most important psychological trait of all is this. Women who always get what they want do not view rejection the same way most people do. Average people see rejection as proof they are not enough. Powerful women see rejection as information. Wrong environment. Wrong timing. Wrong person. Wrong opportunity. But not proof of worthlessness. That mindset protects confidence tremendously. Because once rejection stops feeling fatal emotionally, women become far more fearless socially. And fearlessness changes outcomes. At the core of it all, the psychology of powerful women is surprisingly simple. They trust themselves. Not perfectly. Not constantly. But enough to keep moving. Enough to take risks. Enough to survive criticism. Enough to leave unhealthy situations. Enough to stop shrinking themselves for comfort. And once a woman fully develops that kind of internal certainty, people feel it immediately. Before she even says a word. Fear is one of the most powerful invisible forces shaping female behavior. Not because women are weak, but because many women were conditioned from childhood to fear consequences socially more than men ever were. Fear being disliked. Fear looking desperate. Fear rejection. Fear judgment. Fear confrontation. Fear embarrassment. Fear loneliness. Fear becoming too much. Fear becoming unwanted. Fear becoming difficult. Fear failing publicly. And over time, these fears quietly begin controlling decisions so deeply that many women stop recognizing fear as fear at all. They start calling it being careful. But carefulness can become a prison. There are women with brilliant ideas who never launch businesses because they fear criticism. Women who stay in emotionally draining relationships because they fear starting over. Women who remain silent in meetings because they fear sounding stupid. Women who settle for less financially because they fear negotiating. Women who tolerate disrespect because they fear abandonment more than unhappiness. Fear does not always scream. Sometimes fear whispers softly enough to sound reasonable. That is what makes it dangerous. One woman spent 11 years in a relationship she knew was emotionally dead. No excitement, no emotional safety, no real intimacy, but every time she imagined leaving, fear flooded her mind. What if I never find anyone again? What if I regret it? What if I'm too old to start over? So she stayed. Not because she was happy. Because fear made unhappiness feel safer than uncertainty. That is how fear steals years from women silently. Fear loves familiarity, even when familiarity is painful. This is why many women unconsciously shrink themselves socially too. They downplay intelligence, downplay ambition, downplay beauty, downplay confidence, downplay standards. Why? Because standing out attracts attention. And attention attracts judgment. Many women secretly learned early in life that visibility can feel emotionally dangerous. A girl gets mocked for speaking confidently in class. Another gets called arrogant for being ambitious. Another gets bullied for being attractive. Another gets labeled intimidating for setting boundaries. Eventually, many women begin self-editing automatically to avoid emotional discomfort. And the terrifying part is this. The world rewards visibility aggressively. The woman willing to be seen usually gets more opportunities than the woman hiding herself psychologically. This creates one of the greatest tragedies in female potential. Talented women living invisible lives. Not because they lack capability. Because fear trained them to play small. There is a quote often attributed to Marianne Williamson that perfectly explains this psychological struggle. Your playing small does not serve the world. That line hits deeply because so many women secretly know they're shrinking themselves. They know they're overthinking texts, overthinking opinions, overthinking risks, overthinking visibility, overthinking judgment. And overthinking slowly becomes paralysis. Fear also changes women physically and emotionally in ways they rarely notice. A fearful woman second-guesses herself constantly. Her body language becomes hesitant. Her speech becomes apologetic. Her decisions become delayed. She asks for permission unconsciously through tone and behavior. Meanwhile, confident women move differently because fear no longer dominates every decision. Not because they feel no fear, but because they stopped obeying it. That is the real difference. Fearless women are not fearless because they are magically brave. They simply trained themselves to act while uncomfortable. Most women wait for fear to disappear before taking action. Powerful women take action first and let fear catch up later. That changes everything. Another major fear controlling women is fear of loneliness. This fear alone keeps millions trapped in bad relationships, fake friendships, emotionally draining family dynamics, and low standards. Some women tolerate inconsistency, disrespect, cheating, manipulation, or emotional neglect simply because loneliness feels terrifying, psychologically. But eventually, powerful women realize something life-changing. Loneliness is temporary. Self-betrayal becomes permanent if repeated long enough. That realization creates emotional freedom. Now she can walk away. Now she can choose peace over attachment. Now she can stop begging emotionally unavailable people to value her properly. And suddenly her standards rise naturally. Fear of rejection also destroys opportunities quietly. Many women never approach opportunities because they fear hearing no. But rejection is often just part of visibility. The more visible someone becomes, the more rejection becomes normal. Women who succeed massively eventually stop personalizing rejection emotionally. Wrong fit. Wrong timing. Wrong environment. But not proof they are worthless. This mindset becomes incredibly powerful because fear weakens dramatically once rejection loses emotional control over the mind. And perhaps the deepest fear of all is fear of becoming fully powerful. Because power changes relationships. Power changes expectations. Power changes identity. Some women subconsciously fear their own potential because they know becoming bold may make them harder to control, harder to manipulate, harder to shame, and harder to emotionally contain. But here is the truth: most fearless women eventually discover fear never fully disappears. The goal is not eliminating fear. The goal is becoming bigger than it. The moment a woman realizes fear should not make her decisions for her anymore, her life begins changing immediately. Because fear keeps women invisible. But courage makes women unforgettable. One of the biggest reasons many women suffer emotionally is because they were taught that caring deeply automatically makes them good people. So they overgive, overexplain, overforgive, overthink, oversay, overlove, and eventually overdestroy themselves emotionally trying to save situations, relationships, friendships, and people who were never fully choosing them in return. That is why emotional detachment becomes life-changing for women. Not coldness. Not cruelty. Detachment. The ability to feel emotions without becoming controlled by them. The ability to care without losing yourself. The ability to walk away from disrespect without collapsing emotionally. Most women are never taught this skill. Instead, many are conditioned to emotionally attach to outcomes intensely. They become attached to texts, attached to validation, attached to attention, attached to relationships surviving at all costs, attached to being liked, attached to fixing people emotionally. And that attachment creates suffering. Because attachment without emotional control creates desperation. Desperation destroys power. One woman described how she used to lose herself completely anytime a relationship became unstable. If a man became distant, her mind immediately spiraled. She overanalyzed response times, reread conversations, blamed herself, tried harder, became more emotionally available while receiving less in return. The more emotionally attached she became, the less respected she felt. Eventually, something changed. After another painful heartbreak, she stopped chasing closure from people who clearly lacked consistency. She stopped begging emotionally unavailable people to communicate properly. She stopped trying to earn love through self-sacrifice. And slowly, she learned one of the most powerful lessons a woman can ever learn. Not everything deserves emotional access to you. That realization changed her entire life. Emotionally detached women move differently. Not because they do not feel deeply, but because they stop allowing emotions to control their decisions completely. A detached woman can love someone and still leave them. She can care deeply and still set boundaries. She can feel disappointment without emotionally collapsing. She can miss someone without abandoning herself. That is power. This is also why emotionally detached women often appear magnetic. They are emotionally grounded, calm, centered, harder to manipulate, harder to emotionally destabilize. People can feel when someone is internally dependent versus internally secure. And emotional security is attractive. There is a quote from Lao Tzu that says, "Care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner." That quote explains female emotional suffering perfectly. Many women are emotionally exhausted because too many people have psychological access to their peace. Every opinion affects them. Every rejection wounds them deeply. Every inconsistency consumes their thoughts. But emotionally detached women begin protecting their minds strategically. They stop reacting instantly. They stop explaining themselves endlessly. They stop begging people to choose them correctly. They stop confusing emotional intensity with love. And suddenly life becomes quieter internally. Another important truth women eventually discover is this: attachment often blinds people to reality. A woman emotionally attached to potential ignores disrespect, ignores inconsistency, ignores manipulation, ignores emotional unavailability. Because attachment keeps hoping reality will change. Detachment sees reality clearly. That clarity protects women tremendously. This does not mean becoming emotionless or cynical. The goal is not to stop loving. The goal is learning how to love without abandoning your self-respect. Emotionally detached women understand that peace is expensive psychologically, so they protect it carefully. They stop arguing endlessly with people committed to misunderstanding them. They stop forcing relationships that constantly drain them. They stop trying to heal people who enjoy staying broken. And perhaps most importantly, they stop negotiating against themselves emotionally. Because once a woman learns emotional detachment properly, she becomes far harder to manipulate through guilt, fear, inconsistency, or emotional chaos. That is why emotional detachment is not weakness. It is emotional discipline. And emotional discipline changes everything. Most women do not realize how much rejection controls their lives until they begin trying to grow. The fear of hearing no silently shapes careers, relationships, friendships, business decisions, confidence levels, and even identity itself. It is why many women never approach opportunities first. Never negotiate. Never confess feelings. Never start businesses. Never leave toxic situations. Never raise standards. Never become fully visible. Because rejection feels personal. And for many women, rejection does not simply feel uncomfortable. It feels humiliating. That is why becoming comfortable with rejection changes everything psychologically. Because once rejection loses emotional control over a woman's mind, fear loses power too. Most people avoid rejection so aggressively that they accidentally avoid transformation at the same time. One woman stayed in the same underpaying job for 6 years because she feared applying elsewhere and getting rejected. Another stayed in a dead relationship because being unwanted terrified her more than being unhappy. Another spent years posting nothing online despite having incredible ideas because criticism from strangers felt emotionally unbearable. Fear of rejection creates invisible prisons. And the worst part is that many women start rejecting themselves before life even gets the chance to. They talk themselves out of opportunities automatically. She probably won't reply. I'm probably not qualified. They'll laugh at me. I'll look stupid. I'm not good enough yet. That internal rejection becomes more dangerous than external rejection itself. There's a quote from J.K. Rowling that says, "Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." That quote matters because powerful women eventually stop seeing rejection as destruction. They begin seeing it as redirection. And that mental shift changes everything. Fearless women are not fearless because life accepts them constantly. They are fearless because rejection no longer defines them emotionally. That is the secret. One entrepreneur recalled being rejected by investors repeatedly when launching her business. At first, every rejection felt deeply personal. She would cry afterward, question herself, overthink conversations, and feel embarrassed for even trying. But eventually something strange happened. The more rejection she experienced, the less emotionally fatal it became. She adapted psychologically. Instead of hearing, "You are not enough," she started hearing, "This opportunity simply did not align." That emotional detachment allowed her to keep moving. Years later, the same woman built a company that changed her financial life completely. Most people never reach that level because rejection scares them back into comfort too early. This is why rejection tolerance becomes a superpower. The woman willing to risk embarrassment eventually outgrows the woman obsessed with avoiding it. Because growth requires visibility. And visibility naturally attracts rejection sometimes. The woman who posts her work publicly risks criticism. The woman who negotiates risks hearing no. The woman who dates intentionally risks disappointment. The woman who starts over risks failure. But she also gains access to opportunities fearful people never experience. Another truth many women eventually discover is this: rejection often reveals incompatibility, not inadequacy. Someone rejecting you does not automatically mean you lack value. Sometimes it simply means wrong timing, wrong environment, wrong chemistry, wrong audience, or wrong alignment. But insecure women internalize rejection as proof they are fundamentally flawed. That mindset destroys confidence slowly. Fearless women think differently. They understand rejection is part of expansion. Even socially powerful women experience rejection constantly. The difference is that they recover faster emotionally. They do not build entire identities around one painful experience. They move on quicker. Adapt quicker. Heal quicker. And because they recover quicker, they take more risks. That is why they eventually outperform most people around them. Not because they are luckier. Because they stay in the game longer psychologically. At the core of female confidence is this realization: you cannot build an extraordinary life while being emotionally terrified of rejection. The moment a woman becomes willing to hear no without collapsing internally, her entire world expands. Now she can ask. Now she can try. Now she can risk visibility. Now she can stop hiding herself from opportunity. And eventually something powerful happens. Rejection stops feeling like proof she is not enough, and starts feeling like proof she finally had the courage to show up fully. Confidence is one of the most misunderstood things in the world. Most women think confidence is a feeling. It is not. Confidence is a collection of behaviors repeated long enough that the mind eventually accepts them as identity. That means confidence is built physically before it is felt emotionally. This is why many women stay trapped waiting to feel ready before becoming bold. But powerful women understand something life-changing. Action creates confidence, not the other way around. And once women understand this psychologically, everything begins changing faster. The first thing dangerous confidence changes is body language. A woman lacking confidence unconsciously makes herself smaller, shoulders tense, arms folded, nervous laughter, looking down while speaking, weak posture, constant fidgeting, apologetic movements. The body begins revealing insecurity before words even arrive. Meanwhile, confident women move slower. That detail matters. They do not rush every movement nervously. They maintain posture, they take up space naturally. They stop over-smiling to ease tension constantly. Their movements communicate emotional certainty. And people feel that instantly. Body language is psychological broadcasting. A woman who carries herself confidently changes how people respond to her before she even speaks. This is why posture alone can change attraction, authority, and social treatment dramatically. Then comes voice control. Many women accidentally weaken their own authority through tone, speaking too softly, speaking too quickly, ending statements like questions, nervous giggling after serious points, over-explaining every opinion emotionally. Confidence changes vocal energy. A powerful woman speaks clearly, directly, calmly. She does not rush to fill silence because silence no longer scares her. That alone changes social dynamics tremendously. There is a quote from Amy Cuddy that says, "Don't fake it till you make it. Fake it till you become it." That perfectly explains confidence psychology. Because repetition rewires identity. Eye contact is another major confidence signal women underestimate badly. Fearful people break eye contact quickly because direct presence feels emotionally intense. While confident women maintain eye contact longer without panic, not aggressively, calmly. That calmness communicates certainty. And certainty creates influence. One woman explained how she transformed socially simply by changing 3 habits: standing straighter, speaking slower, and maintaining stronger eye contact. Before, people interrupted her constantly, ignored her opinions, treated her like background noise socially. After those changes, people suddenly listened differently. Same woman, different energy. That is how powerful confidence becomes. Standards also create dangerous confidence. Women with low confidence often tolerate too much disrespect, mixed signals, low effort, manipulation, emotional inconsistency, cheap behavior. Why? Because insecurity fears losing people. But confident women stop operating from desperation. They understand attention is not the same as value. So they raise standards. Now they observe behavior instead of chasing potential. Now they stop rewarding inconsistency emotionally. Now they stop trying to convince people to value them properly. That emotional shift changes attraction completely. Because standards communicate self-worth louder than words ever will. Presence is another hidden confidence weapon. Presence means fully owning your energy in a room without constantly seeking validation. Many women physically exist in spaces while psychologically shrinking themselves the entire time. Overthinking appearance. Overthinking opinions. Overthinking reactions. Overthinking whether people like them. Confident women become mentally present instead. And that creates magnetism. People remember women who feel internally grounded. Finally, dangerous confidence comes from self-trust. Not perfection. Self-trust. The belief that even if things go wrong, you will survive emotionally. That belief removes desperation from women completely. Now rejection becomes survivable. Embarrassment becomes survivable. Failure becomes survivable. Heartbreak becomes survivable. And once fear stops controlling every decision, confidence naturally expands. This is why dangerous confidence is not loudness. It is emotional certainty. The woman who trusts herself walks differently, speaks differently, chooses differently, leaves differently, loves differently. And the world reacts to her differently too. Because confidence is not just seen, it is felt. One of the biggest lies many women were taught is that being agreeable automatically makes life easier. At first it seems true. Agreeable women are often called sweet, easygoing, understanding, humble, good women. But over time, many women begin noticing something painful. The more agreeable they become, the more invisible they feel. People interrupt them more, respect them less, push boundaries further, expect more emotional labor, take advantage of their silence. And eventually, many women realize something life-changing. Kindness without assertiveness becomes self-neglect. That is why assertiveness changes female psychology completely. Assertiveness is not aggression. It is clarity. The ability to communicate needs, boundaries, standards, opinions, and expectations directly without collapsing emotionally afterward. Most women struggle with this because they were conditioned to prioritize emotional harmony over honesty. They soften every sentence, over-explain every boundary, apologize before speaking, laugh nervously after serious points, ask for permission psychologically through tone. Meanwhile, confident people speak as if they belong in the conversation already. That difference changes outcomes everywhere. In dating, in business, friendships, family dynamics, in money, in self-respect. One woman recalled how she spent most of her 20s, terrified of disappointing people. She said yes constantly, even when exhausted, covered for coworkers, tolerated disrespect from partners, lent money she could not afford to lose, agreed to things she secretly hated. And because she avoided conflict obsessively, people slowly stopped respecting her boundaries altogether. Then something snapped. After years of emotional exhaustion, she began practicing direct communication for the first time in her life. That doesn't work for me. I'm unavailable. I disagree. I expect better communication than this. At first, it felt terrifying. Then something shocking happened. Her anxiety started disappearing. Because resentment disappears when honesty replaces suppression. There's a quote from Brené Brown that says, "Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves even when we risk disappointing others." That quote explains female assertiveness perfectly. Many women avoid assertiveness because they fear becoming disliked, but constantly abandoning yourself emotionally to keep others comfortable slowly destroys confidence from the inside. Assertive women understand something deeply important. Temporary discomfort protects long-term peace. This is why boundaries become powerful psychologically. Boundaries are not walls. They are instructions. They teach people how access to you works. Women lacking boundaries often attract emotional chaos because people naturally test what they can get away with socially. The woman who tolerates disrespect repeatedly teaches others that disrespect has no consequences. But assertive women interrupt unhealthy behavior early. Not emotionally, calmly, and directly. That calmness creates authority. Another major part of female assertiveness is negotiation. Many women undervalue themselves automatically. They fear asking for more money, more effort, more clarity, more commitment, or better treatment because they fear appearing difficult or demanding. But powerful women stop apologizing for standards. They understand negotiation is part of self-respect. One executive revealed she increased her income dramatically after changing one habit. She stopped accepting first offers automatically. Before, she feared negotiation because she did not want tension or conflict. But once she learned to speak confidently about her value, opportunities changed completely. Confidence affects pricing. Confidence affects treatment. Confidence affects opportunity. This is why assertiveness becomes a form of protection. Assertive women become harder to manipulate emotionally because they communicate clearly instead of silently hoping people just understand. They stop expecting mind reading. Stop suppressing resentment. Stop tolerating emotional confusion endlessly. And most importantly, they stop apologizing for existing. That habit alone changes female energy completely. Confident women do not apologize for speaking clearly, for taking space, for having standards, for protecting peace, for wanting more, for saying no. And once women stop shrinking themselves emotionally for comfort, something powerful happens. People begin responding differently. Because assertiveness communicates value. It tells the world, I respect myself enough to be honest. And the women who master that skill often become impossible to overlook. One of the most dangerous addictions many women have is not alcohol, not shopping, not relationships, or approval. The need to be liked, accepted, validated, chosen, praised, included, desired, and emotionally approved of by everyone around them. And the terrifying part is that most women do not even realize how deeply approval controls their lives. Approval controls what they wear, what they post, what they say, who they date, what standards they tolerate, how much they shrink themselves socially, how long they stay silent, how much disrespect they endure. Some women are not living authentically at all. They are performing constantly. Performing to avoid judgment. Performing to avoid rejection. Performing to stay emotionally accepted. And slowly that performance disconnects them from themselves completely. This is why approval addiction destroys female power psychologically. Because the moment your self-worth depends heavily on external validation, other people begin controlling your emotions indirectly. One negative comment ruins your mood. One rejection destroys confidence. One person pulling away creates panic. One disagreement feels unbearable. One moment of criticism becomes emotional collapse. That is not freedom. That is emotional dependency. One woman admitted she spent most of her 20s shaping her personality around what made people comfortable. Around men, she softened herself to seem less intimidating. Around friends, she downplayed ambition so nobody felt insecure. At work, she stayed quiet to avoid conflict. Online, she obsessed over likes, reactions, and approval constantly. And despite all that effort, she still felt anxious all the time. Because approval addiction creates exhaustion. The mind never rests when it constantly asks, do they like me? Am I enough? Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? That mental prison slowly destroys confidence from the inside. There is a quote from Glennon Doyle that says, "The braver I am, the luckier I get." That quote matters because bravery often begins where approval-seeking ends. Powerful women eventually understand something life-changing. Not everyone needs to approve of you for your life to work beautifully. That realization creates emotional freedom. Most women fear disapproval because they were conditioned socially to associate acceptance with safety. A good woman was often described as agreeable, accommodating, selfless, emotionally available, and easy to manage. But women who constantly prioritize being liked over being authentic slowly lose themselves. That is why many women secretly feel invisible even when surrounded by people. They abandoned too much of themselves to maintain approval. Approval addiction also destroys standards. Women desperate for validation tolerate behavior they should reject immediately. Mixed signals, bare minimum effort, emotional inconsistency, manipulation. Why? Because losing attention feels emotionally terrifying. But emotionally secure women stop treating attention like love. That changes relationships completely. A woman addicted to approval asks, "How do I keep this person interested?" A powerful woman asks, "Does this connection even align with my standards?" That shift creates self-respect. And self-respect creates magnetism. This is also why confident women often seem calmer socially. They are not obsessively managing everyone's opinions emotionally. They understand some people will misunderstand them no matter what. And instead of collapsing under criticism, they continue being themselves anyway. That is confidence. Breaking free from approval addiction requires discomfort at first. Women must learn how to disappoint people without feeling guilty constantly. Learn how to say no without over-explaining. Learn how to be misunderstood sometimes. Learn how to stop chasing validation through appearance, relationships, attention, or praise. At first, this feels terrifying. Then it becomes liberating. Because eventually something powerful happens. The woman who once needed everyone to approve of her begins approving of herself first. And once a woman reaches that level psychologically, people feel the difference immediately. She becomes calmer, stronger, harder to manipulate, harder to shame, harder to emotionally control, because approval no longer owns her mind. And that is where real female power begins. At the beginning of this audiobook, you were introduced to a powerful idea. Most women are not struggling because they lack intelligence, beauty, talent, or potential. They are struggling because fear has been controlling their behavior for years without them fully realizing it. Fear of rejection. Fear of judgment. Fear of being disliked. Fear of being too much. Fear of standing out. Fear of losing people. Fear of fully becoming who they are capable of becoming. And because of that fear, many women shrink themselves long before the world even gets the chance to challenge them. But everything changes the moment a woman stops asking, "How do I make everyone comfortable with me?" and starts asking, "How do I become fully comfortable with myself?" That is the beginning of real power. Throughout this audiobook, you learned that confidence is not magic. It is not something only lucky women are born with. It is built through risk, through rejection, through emotional discipline, through boundaries, through uncomfortable action repeated long enough that fear slowly loses authority over the mind. You learned that emotional detachment is not coldness. It is self-protection. You learned that assertiveness is not aggression. It is clarity. You learned that rejection is not destruction. It is part of expansion. And perhaps most importantly, you learned that constantly needing approval quietly destroys female freedom. All these lessons lead to one final truth. The world changes when a woman stops apologizing for her presence. A woman who trusts herself walks differently, speaks differently, loves differently, leaves differently, chooses differently. And people feel that shift immediately. Because confidence is energy before it becomes words. There is a reason emotionally grounded women become unforgettable socially. They are no longer desperately trying to convince everyone to value them. They value themselves first. That internal certainty changes attraction, opportunity, influence, and even identity itself. One woman described how she spent years trying to become the perfect woman. Easygoing, selfless, always available emotionally, always understanding, always forgiving. She thought that if she became lovable enough, people would finally treat her properly. Instead, she became emotionally exhausted. Then one day she stopped. Stopped chasing. Stopped proving. Begging for consistency from inconsistent people. Stopped abandoning herself to maintain relationships. And for the first time in her life, she felt powerful instead of emotionally dependent. That is the transformation this audiobook has been about all along. Not becoming heartless. Not becoming masculine. Not becoming dominant for the sake of ego. But becoming psychologically free. Free from approval addiction. Free from fear controlling every decision. Free from shrinking yourself to protect other people's comfort. Free from believing confidence is somehow unfeminine. Because the truth is simple. A woman can be soft and still powerful. Kind and still assertive. Emotional and still disciplined. Feminine and still fearless. That combination becomes magnetic. This is why the title of this audiobook matters so deeply. Fearless like a man, magnetic like a woman. Not because women should imitate men, but because many women were taught to suppress the exact traits that create confidence, freedom, ambition, resilience, and influence psychologically. Now you understand those traits differently. Now you understand why bold women move through life differently. Why emotionally secure women attract differently. Why women with standards command more respect. Why women who stop fearing rejection become unstoppable. And now comes the most important part. Applying it. Because knowledge changes nothing without action. Confidence must be practiced. Boundaries must be enforced. Fear must be challenged. Visibility must be embraced. You will still feel uncomfortable sometimes. You will still doubt yourself sometimes. You will still face rejection sometimes. But now you understand something powerful. Fear does not have to control your life anymore. And once a woman truly understands that emotionally, mentally, and psychologically, she becomes incredibly difficult to stop. Not because she became perfect. Because she finally stopped abandoning herself.